This is Gary Jubelin, the detective who directly led and coordinated most of the investigation into the 2014 William Tyrrell disappearance. His insights carry the most weight from the inside. But that holds until he talks about the suspects.
It's embarrassing for me to even sit and whinge about what's happened to me when the families, the biological and the foster family, what they're going. The focus should be on, it was an investigation into William Tyrrell. A 3-year-old child had been abducted.
William was abducted, and the foster family is completely innocent. This conclusion split the community. It went against what everyone thought, turning him into public enemy number one.
Police, I still love New South Wales police, but there were certain people in there that just, they had to be escorted in. I felt like Hannibal Lecter. It was ridiculous.
I was taken off the investigations and I could no longer continue to support victims and lock up the...
So what drove the man closest to the case to say that? Are the foster parents truly blameless? And most crucially, where is William Tyrrell now? We're digging through the facts, piecing together the shifts and theories to get closer to the truth in this episode.
Personally, I still haven't stepped away from the case. It's very, very dear to me, and I sincerely hope we find out what's happened to William. The families deserve it, and I think society deserves to find out what happened.
Who's the killer? Starting right at the beginning with Gary Jubelin's initial role as lead investigator from 2015 to 2019. Back then, Jubelin framed the perpetrator as most likely an opportunistic abductor. Someone he described as a sneaky complex offender who could have driven by the foster grandmother's home in Kendall, New South Wales, and snatched the 3-year-old while he played alone in his Spider-Man suit. This theory wasn't pulled out of thin air. It stemmed from the narrow window of opportunity. Estimates ranged from just 5 to 45 minutes, when William vanished without a trace on September 12, 2014. There were no signs of struggle at the scene. No screams heard by the foster mother or sister who were inside, and the property sat on a quiet cul-de-sac where a passing vehicle could easily spot a child playing unsupervised near the driveway. Police profilers backed this up, noting the abductor would have been highly opportunistic, capitalizing on the remote yet accessible location. Jubelin pointed to the lack of forced entry or disturbance in the yard, suggesting a quick grab and go by someone cruising the area, perhaps familiar with the mid-north coast roads, but not necessarily the family. We see in early press conferences how he emphasized treating the case as a live child scenario unless proven otherwise, urging the public to report any suspicious vehicles from that day, like the 2 cars described by witnesses, one gray and one white, seen lingering nearby. This abduction angle drove massive searches through bushland and appeals for dashcam footage. But it also raised early questions about whether the evidence was strong enough to rule out other possibilities so quickly, especially given statistics showing most child disappearances involve known individuals rather than strangers. Diving deeper into Jubelin's suspicions during those years, one key figure was Bill Spedding, a local washing machine repairman who became a central target. Spedding had visited the foster grandmother's home just 3 days before William went missing to quote on fixing a broken appliance, putting him in direct proximity to the scene. Jubelin latched onto Spedding's historical, sensitive charges from the 1980s, allegations involving 2 young girls that had never led to convictions, but were revived as part of the investigation. The theory was that Spedding could have scoped the property during his visit, noted the child's presence, and returned opportunistically. To pressure a confession, Jubelin's team pursued Spedding aggressively, charging him with those old offenses in 2015, which Spedding claimed were fabricated or exaggerated to link him to William. Court documents later revealed Jubelin allegedly told Spedding, "I will ruin you," during an intense pursuit that included media leaks tying his name to the Tyrrell case whenever updates surfaced. Spedding's full story unfolds like a nightmare for the innocent. A grandfather running a small business, he was arrested publicly, his home raided multiple times, and his reputation shredded in the press. He spent months in custody awaiting trial on the historical charges, only to be acquitted in 2017 when a judge found no credible evidence. But the damage was done, his business collapsed, family strained, and he endured years of public suspicion. By 2022, Spedding sued the state for malicious prosecution, winning $1.48 million plus interest and costs totaling around $1.8 million, after an appeal failed in 2023. The Supreme Court ruled Jubelin's actions were motivated by a desire to break Spedding rather than genuine belief, highlighting fabricated claims and overreach. Even as Jubelin defended his tactics in court, saying he stood by what he did, This raises doubts about the accuracy of his initial suspicions. Did the historical charges truly warrant such fixation? Or was it a tunnel vision push that overlooked weaker links to the actual disappearance? Shifting to another suspect under Jubilin's lens, Paul Savage, the elderly neighbor living just 300 meters from the Foster home, drew attention for his odd behavior in the aftermath. Savage, a reclusive 75-year-old at the time, was one of the first to join search parties and frequently visited the police station with tips, but his rambling statements and inconsistent accounts flagged him as suspicious. Jubilin placed him under surveillance, believing Savage's proximity and erratic demeanor, described as talking in circles about the case, made him a viable person of interest. The full narrative here gets murky. Savage claimed he heard a child's cry that morning, but later changed details, saying he was gardening or walking his dog. Jubilin, convinced Savage might crack under pressure, recorded 4 private conversations with him between 2017 and 2018 using a personal device, ostensibly for self-protection in case Savage self-harmed, complained, or if colleagues didn't support Jubilin's version of events. These recordings captured Savage denying involvement, but also making vague comments about the bushland, which Jubilin interpreted as evasive. However, a magistrate ruled in 2020 that the taps were illegal, lacking proper warrants despite existing surveillance approvals, labeling Jubilin's conduct as unlawful and driven by a pursue-at-all-costs mentality. Savage's story continued to evolve. By 2024, he gave a new version of his actions that day during the inquest, admitting fears the case would never resolve and taunting Jubilin over his removal. Though never charged, Savage endured home searches, constant monitoring, and public scrutiny that isolated him further in Kendall. Jubilin maintained the recordings were necessary, but this episode prompts questions about the reliability of his judgments. Was Savage's oddness truly indicative of guilt? Or did Jubilin's methods amplify harmless eccentricities into something sinister, potentially skewing the investigation's direction? On the flip side, Jubilin excluded the foster parents early on, a stance that became a cornerstone of his views. He argued there was no evidence linking them, no inconsistencies in their timelines, no forensic traces suggesting foul play at home, and bugging their car for weeks yielded nothing incriminating. Instead, Jubilin formed a friendship with them, particularly the foster mother, whom he repeatedly described as a decent human being and kind person. In interviews and his book, he viewed any theory of family involvement as lacking proof, insisting his team grilled them thoroughly but found their grief authentic. The foster parents' story is heartbreaking. Affluent Sydney professionals fostering William and his sister after removal from biological parents due to neglect. They were visiting the grandmother when William vanished mid-morning play. The mother recalled hearing his roar, like a tiger, then silence. She searched frantically before alerting police. Jubilin's exclusion stemmed from polygraph-like interviews and surveillance that cleared them. But it also built personal rapport. He shared updates, attended memorials, and saw their pain up close. This closeness raises subtle doubts about objectivity. Could emotional bonds have influenced his dismissal of alternative theories, even if evidence was thin at the time? Then there's the unnamed off-grid neighbor, dubbed Gorillas in the Mist by detectives for his secluded, jungle-like lifestyle on a nearby property. This man's full account is one of the more bizarre threads. He built a shrine to William at the foot of his bed, complete with media clippings, handwritten poetry about the investigation, and quotes from Jubilin himself like, "No stone unturned." Suspicion arose from his repeated police station visits, where he'd demand to speak directly to Jubilin, even motioning as if wanting to be handcuffed, suggesting a possible confession urge. Jubilin called this most concerning. In a 2020 letter to the coroner, citing multiple red flags, like the man's disappearance for 6 weeks posted under strange circumstances. What happened to a camera, he mentioned. His property wasn't searched until years later, revealing the shrine but no direct evidence. Though he insisted on testifying at the inquest, he never did, leaving his story dangling. Jubilin pushed for scrutiny here, seeing the obsession as a potential guilt indicator, but the lack of follow-through questions the thoroughness. Why delay the search, and did this fixation truly point to involvement, or just a lonely man's fixation on a local tragedy? At this point, let's pause for a moment to discuss Gary Jubilin and his acts. From what we saw, Jubilin comes across as intensely driven and obsessive, a former homicide detective renowned for cracking tough cases, but haunted by unresolved ones. This persistence shines in his no stone unturned mantra, but it's coupled with a lack of remorse. A 2020 judge noted he showed none after convictions for illegal recordings, suggesting a belief he's above the law. Many discussions label it main character syndrome, where his ego led to wasted resources on suspects like Spedding and Savage, ruining lives without solid ties to the disappearance. We see this in his aggressive tactics, like the alleged, "I will ruin you" threat and pursuit, at all costs. Per court rulings, this raises questions: was Jubilant too hasty inclusions, latching onto historical charges or odd behaviors without broader evidence? Or overly negative in execution, amplifying suspicions into overreach that skewed the probe? His stellar career aside, these traits prompt doubt about balanced judgment in high-stakes investigations. Moreover, everything even became more controversial in the later stages of the investigation. By 2021, as police under new lead detective Chief Inspector David Laidlaw pivoted to the foster parents with a cover-up accident theory, suggesting William might have fallen from the balcony, and the mother hid remains to protect custody of the sister, Jubilant shifted to public defense mode. He reiterated no evidence from his era supported this, maintaining their exclusion and focusing on the for William over personal attacks. In interviews, he dismissed criticisms that his team left a mess, arguing they explored every angle, including accidents, but found nothing. This pivot highlighted a change from aggressive pursuit of locals to protecting his original exclusions. Though he didn't reverse on Spedding or Savage, questions linger about this defensiveness. Was it rooted in solid evidence, or a reluctance to admit potential oversights in his 4-year tenure? In his 2022 book, Badness, Jubilant detailed the interrogations of the foster parents, describing how he put the blowtorch on them, separating them for hours of questioning, probing timelines, and analyzing reactions, but concluded no involvement. He defended his past approaches, admitting some errors like the illegal recordings, but standing by decisions on suspects like Spedding, even after the malicious prosecution ruling. The book paints a raw picture. Jubilant is haunted by the case, regretting nothing despite his removal, and frustrated that the shift undermined progress. This evolution shows a softening from focused suspicion to broader advocacy, yet it prompts scrutiny. Did admitting some errors fully address the fallout from his methods, or minimize impacts on cleared suspects? Fast forward to 2024, Jubilant urged current investigators to avoid tunnel vision, keeping an open mind on all potential suspects without hasty exclusions. He still asserted the foster mother was not involved, calling her targeting shameful on the 10-year anniversary, and claimed knowledge of unsolved info that could crack the case. In podcasts and ABC interviews, he expressed frustration with the probe's direction, pushing for transparency and action. We note how he reflected on the decade mark, saying the case baffled Australia and needed fresh eyes, but without backing down on abduction as primary. This raises queries about accuracy. If he knows key info, why not share it earlier? And does his ongoing involvement cloud neutral assessment? Into 2025, Jubilant admitted an obsession, unable to let go after over a decade, viewing the foster mother theory as confusing and wrong, feeling with no new evidence since his 2019 handover. He disagreed with some NSW police who believed her involvement, haunted by his removal but standing by eliminating the family through thorough checks. No reversal on Spedding or Savage, but he emphasized a broader suspect pool, dropping a bombshell that something does not feel right. In the case's progression, perhaps procedural flaws or missed leads. In a candid admission, he said the biggest mistake was taking him off, claiming he was close to solving it. Overall, his evolution started with laser-focused suspicion on locals like Spedding, Savage, and the off-grid neighbor for their proximity, behavior, and history. It shifted to defending past exclusions, especially the family, while urging openness, without reversing core abduction-oriented views, critical of the accident cover-up shift. But this trajectory invites doubt. Was the initial abduction evidence robust enough against stats favoring known perpetrators, or did personal convictions override broader possibilities? Did friendships bias exclusions? And how accurate were pursuits that led to lawsuits and convictions for his own actions? These lingering uncertainties make us question if Jubilant's narrative holds up under fresh scrutiny, especially as the inquest drags on without resolution. The unreliable narrator. It's acceptable that Jubilant's assertions are understandably controversial, but they have caused significant impacts, even heavy disputes in the investigation. Many have pointed out numerous issues in Jubilant's perception of the perpetrator, forcing us to revisit the case situation, especially the information that Jubilin completely ignored. Take the sharp rebukes from former NSW Police Commissioner Mick Fuller back in 2021, who didn't mince words when he labeled Jubilin's handling of the probe as "bit of a mess" that the incoming team had to clean up. Fuller highlighted how resources got squandered chasing down the wrong persons of interest, naming Spedding and Savage specifically, which left potential search areas overgrown with weeds and key leads gathering dust. He went further, dismissing Jubilin's attempts to pin responsibility on higher-ups as ridiculous, and making it clear that no one in command would have the kind of illegal maneuvers Jubilin got caught up in, like those unauthorized recordings. This sentiment echoes through community critiques that surfaced prominently by 2024, especially around the podcast. The witness, William Tyrrell. Listeners and online forums ripped into it for coming across as heavily biased, seemingly crafted to paint the foster mother as entirely innocent, with narration handled by someone who ghostwrote Jubilin's own book. Accusations flew that Jubilin got fooled by what some called a manipulative foster mother, all while he trashed innocent guys like Spedding and Savage in the process. Critics hammered him for incompetence, saying he brushed off solid leads, and even excused her later assault charges against another child by trotting out lines like, "No parents are perfect," which struck many as a weak dodge. The podcast's apologetic tone rubbed people the wrong way, with one Reddit thread calling it the most slanted true crime episode they'd encountered, full of excuses for her behavior without tackling the hard questions head-on. Tensions ran even hotter behind the scenes, as 2024 reports revealed open hostility between Jubilin and former colleagues like Detective Sergeant Craig Lambert. Their clashes got so intense they nearly came to blows, with differing takes on the case's direction spilling out during Jubilin's own hearings. Lambert and others pushed back hard against Jubilin's narrative, arguing his fixation locked the team into dead ends and created rifts and hampered collaboration. These internal beefs underscore how Jubilin's views didn't just stir external debate, but fractured the very unit tasked with solving the mystery. Even Jubilin's own words from 2025 add fuel to the fire of these critiques. He stands firm by his past actions despite the court smackdowns, yet he concedes an ongoing obsession with the case in a nagging sense that something does not feel right about how things unfolded. Back in 2021, he brushed off any flack with claims there wasn't, 1 ounce, of valid criticism during his time at the helm, a stance that now looks tone-deaf given the mounting pushback. This self-assured dismissal only amplifies doubts about whether his ego played a role in overlooking red flags. Shifting to the hard evidence that counters his exoneration of the foster mother. By 2023, NSW Police had compiled and handed over a brief to the Director of Public Prosecutions recommending charges against her for perverting the course of justice and interfering with remains. The core allegation painted a grim picture: an accidental death covered up to shield her from consequences, with the foster mother allegedly disposing of William's remains after a mishap at the grandmother's home. This wasn't some fringe theory, it stemmed from re-examined timelines, witness accounts, and forensic gaps that Jubilin's era apparently glossed over. The 2024 inquest brought this into stark relief, with police laying out a theory that William suffered an accidental fall from the balcony during play, leading to a fatal injury. In this scenario, the foster mother panicked over losing custody of the sister and hid the remains in nearby bushland, staging the disappearance as an abduction. She took the stand in tears, vehemently denying any role and insisting on her innocence. But the counsel assisting the coroner pressed hard, citing inconsistencies in her initial statements and the lack of immediate alerts that might have preserved evidence. This line of inquiry gained traction from truck drivers' testimonies about seeing her in the area post-disappearance, and other circumstantial bits that painted a cover-up motive tied to her protective instincts over the family unit. Compounding this, the foster mother's 2024-2025 assault and intimidation convictions on another child, the sister William was fostering with, revealed a darker side to her parenting. She pled guilty to acts like kicking the girl, issuing threats, rubbing her face in feces, and striking her with a wooden spoon, incidents captured on secret recordings that surfaced during separate proceedings. The full story here is gut-wrenching. These abuses occurred post-William's vanishing, amid the family's stress, but they highlighted a pattern of control and volatility. Though the convictions got overturned on appeal in May 2025, citing From the Tyrrell scrutiny as a mitigating factor, the downgrade to good behavior bonds didn't erase the details. The appeal judge acknowledged the acts but framed them under duress, yet public reaction lingered on how such behavior clashed with the decent image Jubilant promoted. The online threads and public opinions from 2024 piled on, branding the foster mother a control freak who blocked biological parent visits and pushed for full adoption, actions seen as overreaching. Her history with the sister fueled speculation that similar dynamics might have played into William's fate, with forums dissecting how she filed legal moves to solidify her role while the search dragged on. By 2025, she broke her silence and statements urging police to chase another person of interest, all while battling those convictions and blaming case-related stress for her lapses, a narrative that critics saw as deflection rather than accountability. At the heart of these counterpoints lie potential biases in Jubilant's outlook. His admitted friendship with the foster parents, where he labeled the mother a decent human being, likely clouded his judgment, prompting an early and unwavering exclusion without circling back as new details emerged. Reddit users dubbed it main character syndrome, suggesting his ego fueled a rigid fixation on the abduction narrative, sidelining any whiff of family involvement. The ripple effects of these biases are profound. We see how tunnel vision on figures like Spedding and Savage drained resources, stalling bushland digs, and delaying the 2021 shift toward a family accident scenario. His illegal methods, which triggered his 2019 ouster, chipped away at departmental trust, possibly blinding the team to foster family dynamics or overlook persons of interest. Jubilant's responses over the years, from dismissing the mess label to cautioning against tunnel vision in 2024, while venting frustration over the ongoing probe without budging an inch, only deepened the skepticism. Gary Jubilant's situation is not uncommon and has been seen in previous cases, the most controversial of which was probably Lou Smith in the John Bennett Ramsey case in 1996. The Ramsey case kicked off on December 26, 1996, when 6-year-old beauty pageant star John Bennett was discovered missing from her Boulder, Colorado home, only for John Bennett to turn up hours later in the basement with signs of assault. A bizarre ransom note demanding $118,000, matching her father John's recent bonus, sat on the stairs, fueling theories of an intruder who slipped through a broken basement window, left unknown DNA under her fingernails and in her underwear, and perhaps used a stun gun based on marks on her skin. Countering that, suspicion swirled around family involvement, with some believing parents John and Patsy staged a cover-up after an accidental death, pointing to the note's handwriting similarities to Patsy's and the lack of forced entry elsewhere. Nearly 3 decades later, as of our November 2025 dive, the case lingers unsolved, with fresh DNA retesting announced in September at CrimeCon sparking hope. But Boulder PD's annual update last month reiterated no breakthroughs, echoing the frustration in these enduring mysteries. We shift to Steve Thomas, the Boulder PD detective who jumped into the fray early on as lead investigator, bringing his background in narcotics and patrol to what became a media circus. Thomas zeroed in on the parents from the start, convinced the crime scene screamed staging, fibers from Patsy's jacket on the duct tape over John Bennett's mouth, the pineapple in her stomach matching a bowl in the kitchen with Patsy's prints, and those inconsistent statements about the timeline. His full story reads like a detective's nightmare. Assigned days after the discovery, he clashed with the DA's office over what he saw as kid-glove treatment of the Ramseys, who lawyered up fast and delayed full interviews. By August 1998, Thomas resigned in disgust, penning a scathing letter accusing the DA of compromising the probe to shield the influential family. 2 years later, he dropped his bombshell book, John Bennett, Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation, laying out his theory that Patsy accidentally killed John Bennett in a rage over bedwetting, then covered it with John's help, staging the kidnapping. The book stirred massive backlash. The Ramseys sued for libel, settling out of court, but Thomas stood firm, appearing on shows like Larry King to debate them directly, calling out what he deemed ethical lapses. Even in recent reflections, though no fresh 2025 interviews surfaced in our checks, his past barbs labeling the handling a travesty resonate, especially amid ongoing DNA pushes that haven't cracked it yet. Lou Smith enters this tangled web as the counterweight, a retired detective with over 200 solved homicides under his belt, pulled in by the DA in 1997 as an expert consultant to bring fresh eyes. Smith, a devout Christian known for his meticulous reconstructions, dove headfirst into the evidence. crawling through that basement window himself to prove an intruder could have entered undetected. His story unfolds with a blend of faith and forensics. He'd pray over case files, convinced the unmatched male DNA on John Bennett's clothing and the garrote fashioned from household items pointed away from the family. Smith built a suspect database of over 700 names, chasing leads like a similar attempted abduction nearby and footprints in the snow that didn't match the Ramseys. But tensions boiled over with the police team, who viewed his intruder focus as naive. He resigned in September 1998, blasting the probe in his letter for fixating on the parents under an umbrella of suspicion, while ignoring outsider evidence. Post-resignation, Smith's advocacy ramped up. He testified for the Ramseys before a 1999 grand jury that voted to indict, but saw no charges filed, and he worked pro bono for the family, compiling intruder profiles and appearing in documentaries like The Case of John Bennett Ramsey in 2016, where he demonstrated the stun gun theory with marks matching a device not found in the home. Until his death from cancer in 2010, Smith chased shadows, even submitting a report naming a convicted PD as a possible match based on handwriting and proximity. His legacy. A partial win in 2008 when New Touch DNA cleared the Ramseys officially, but the case's stagnation left his efforts bittersweet, with critics arguing his sympathy blinded him to family red flags. Gary Jubelin shares striking positional echoes with Smith, both as seasoned homicide vets thrust into child mysteries that refuse to crack. Jubelin with decades in NSW police tackling cases like Barraville, Smith solving hundreds before consulting on Ramsey. They led probes in unresolved tragedies, Jubelin steering the Tyrrell task force until his 2019 ouster over scandals, Smith bowing out after clashing with the establishment. Both championed outsider-perpetrator angles. Smith reconstructing intruder paths via the window, Jubelin envisioning a drive by abductor snatching William. After removal, they turned Lick 2019 ouster over scandals, Smith bowing out after clashing with the establishment. Both championed outsider-perpetrator angles, Smith reconstructing intruder paths via the window, Jubelin envisioning a drive by abductor snatching William. After removal, they turned public advocates, Smith defending the Ramseys in court and media until 2010, Jubelin backing the Foster family in podcasts and interviews into 2025. Delving into why these detectives shielded victims' families, Smith's drive stemmed from evidentiary voids, no Ramsey DNA mixing with the foreign sample. No fingerprints on the note from family hands, stun gun marks unmatched to home tools. Ethically, he couldn't stomach vilifying grieving parents without ironclad proof, once stating in interviews his prayers confirmed their innocence, pushing to lift the suspicion cloud so the real killer could surface. His moral compass, honed by faith and experience, compelled him to exonerate them publicly, even testifying against indictments. Jubelin mirrored this with no forensic ties to the Foster parents, bugged vehicles turning up zilch, and consistent accounts. He decried their scrutiny as shameful, forging bonds over shared grief to seek William's truth without destroying lives. Personal histories fueled their convictions, Smith's intuition from countless cases, Jubelin's background urging early exclusions to dodge bias. Like the conflict of Jubelin with his Mick Fool, Lou Smith also had his own battlefield. The core rift between Smith and another key investigator, Steve Thomas, boiled down to theories Smith's intruder backed by DNA, entry points, and external suspects. Thomas's family staging rooted in scene anomalies like the undisturbed spiderweb on the window, and ransom phrasing echoing Patsy's speech patterns. Their professional spats escalated in meetings, Thomas branding Smith's demos fantasy, Smith retorting Thomas ignored science for vendettas. Thomas bolted in 1998, slamming the DA for coddling the Ramseys. Smith followed suit, unable to chase intruders amid family fixation. Debates raged on far later, Thomas's ideas dominating tabloids, Smith's gaining ground with 2008 DNA clearances. Contrasting Smith's arc, his push yielded, the Ramseys exonerated via advanced testing, but the unsolved status at his 2010 passing fell short of satisfaction. No killer nabbed despite his database. Critics like Thomas, echoing in past talks the probes, travesty, highlight the division. Broader ripples saw Smith advance DNA in cold cases, yet the 2025 stasis, with September's retests and no arrests, mirrors unresolved frustrations, leaving legacies of ethical stands amid perpetual debate. Back to the current status of the William Tyrrell case, Gary Jubelin's abduction theory hasn't been fully debunked, nor have the accident cover-up angles pursued by later investigators like those under David Laidlaw. On the flip side, The 2023 police brief recommending charges against the foster mother for perverting justice and interfering with remains tied to balcony fall scenarios and her overturned assault convictions keeps family involvement in play, supported by timeline gaps and abuse patterns. All these possibilities get specific attention. Jubilee's podcast pushes for broader suspect pools, while the inquest scrutinizes bushland digs and DNA retests. We have to acknowledge the relentless efforts of investigators, from Jubilee's 4-year grind despite legal fallout to the current team's pivot amid public scrutiny. They've poured resources into searches, warrants, and appeals, chasing closure for a decade, plus mystery. But with no body, no arrests, and theories clashing like in Ramsey, what do you think happened? Do you lean toward abduction, accident, or something else? Where's William Tyrrell? Back to the core of this case. What happened to William Tyrrell, and where he might be now? Drawing from the investigative angles we've broken down together, we turn to piecing together the possibilities where William could still be alive, starting with the scenarios that keep surfacing in discussions around his disappearance. One key possibility is that he was snatched by a stranger and raised under a new identity to blend in without detection, perhaps as the abductor's own child, with motives tied to PD interests or an illegal adoption setup. In this setup, the kidnapper could have integrated him into a family life far from Kendall, changing his appearance and daily routines to erase any trace of his past. Another angle points to abduction by someone known to the family or a trafficking ring, hauling him off to a distant spot for sale or forced labor, where brainwashing might wipe out his memories of that September morning in 2014. We also consider ties to his biological relatives, like a grandfather or father stepping in for revenge or custody claims, based on those psychic rumors linking the grandfather to figures like Michael Jackson, keeping William hidden in a secluded spot. Then there's the opportunistic grab, where the perpetrator decides to keep him alive for ongoing use or companionship, mirroring cases where kids turn up years later after surviving in captivity. If William is out there alive, he'd be about 14 years old now, born on June 26, 2011, likely with his brown hair and brown eyes still prominent, but perhaps styled differently to avoid recognition, standing around 160 to 170 centimeters tall based on age progression estimates. He might not recall the events at all, conditioned to a new name in life, dealing with psychological scars from the trauma, like anxiety or detachment issues common in long-term abduction survivors. As for location, he could still be in Australia, tucked away in remote areas like the mid-north coast of New South Wales, close enough to Kendall that it feels familiar but isolated to stay under the radar, or pushed further inland to central Australia near Uluru, where that 2015 rumor placed him. We pull from reports of him possibly in Bundanoon on the south coast, with a 2023 psychic vision describing his face pressed against a vehicle window, suggesting movement but survival. Overseas is another option if a criminal network got involved, like the two unconfirmed sightings in New Zealand back in 2016, one in Christchurch and one in Auckland, that police checked out without leads. Places like off-grid properties fit too, drawing from the neighbor who built that shrine and vanished for weeks, hinting at hidden lifestyles where someone could raise a child undetected. Diving into the content of these hypotheses, the stranger abduction lays out a quick snatch. William playing alone in his Spider-Man suit on the front lawn of his foster grandmother's home in Kendall, New South Wales, that morning of September 12, 2014, gone in 5 to 45 minutes without a sound or sign of struggle, whisked away in one of those gray or white vehicles spotted lingering nearby, headed far to be raised or exploited with PD motives or sold into adoption black markets. The perpetrator here remains nameless, labeled a sneaky complex offender by profilers, possibly a truck driver or someone familiar with mid-North Coast roads who saw an easy target in the quiet cul-de-sac. Shifting to abduction by acquaintances, the story involves surveillance of the family, leading to a swift grab from the yard, stashing him locally at first before relocation for sale, revenge, or personal gain. Suspects include neighbor Paul Savage with his odd behavior, rambling accounts, and shifting stories about hearing a child's cry while gardening or walking his dog that morning. Bill Spedding fits as well, the repairman who visited the home 3 days prior to fix a washing machine, carrying a history of 1980s charges, potentially using that access to plan. The unnamed off-grid neighbor, nicknamed Gorillas in the Mist, for his jungle-like secluded setup, adds layers. He built a shrine at the foot of his bed with media clippings, handwritten poetry on the case, and quotes like, "No stone unturned," made repeated police station visits demanding talks, even gesturing for handcuffs as if craving arrest, and disappeared for 6 weeks right after the incident, raising flags of involvement in hiding or raising the boy. Analyzing why William might still be alive pulls from the glaring absence of death proof. No remains turned up despite 11 years of massive searches, no blood or struggle marks at the scene, and the 2024-2025 inquest still open without a final death ruling, wrapping up submissions but leaving room for survival. Those over one Salozan alleged sightings NSW police fielded keep the hope flickering, even if most flop as mistakes or pranks. Persistent ones stand out, like the 2015 Uluru report where a woman swore she saw him a year on, pushing reports to authorities and Crime Stoppers repeatedly only to get brushed off, insisting on details that matched his look. The Bundanoon psychic vision from 2023 adds to it, describing him alive with his face against a car window, while the two 2016 New Zealand spots in Christchurch and Auckland got police checks but no hits. Debbie Malone's psychic input reinforces this, her visions showing him taken in a white 4WD but still breathing, held in a spot that feels like home at first, matching some rumor patterns despite the skepticism around psychics. Stats show rarity. Kids like J.C. Dugard surviving 18 years or Elizabeth Smart 9 months. But it's not impossible, with under 10% odds but non-zero when no body surfaces. The $1 million reward bumped up in 2021 and renewed for 2025 info leading to his return. Signals authorities haven't ruled out life. Bushland sweeps with drones and dogs turning up nothing new on death, plus that 2025 tree graffiti near the site, spotted by a local man hinting at secret knowledge, could point to someone knowing he's out there. Even the satirical X post from 2025, admitting to hiding him while a joke, feeds into the survival buzz and the foster parents dismissing some 2021 breakthroughs as fake but not blanket denying all leaves wiggle room. Inquest bits like the 2020 testimony from a Kendall man certain he saw William distressed in a speeding car's back seat that day suggest he was taken alive, not harmed on spot. Telling the full stories of post-disappearance sightings starts with that Kendall local's account from the 2020 inquest. He stepped up to testify he was sure about spotting William in a fast-moving car's rear, the boy looking distressed as the vehicle sped off the day he vanished, a detail police probed but couldn't nail down. Then there's the neighbor's claim at the 2019 inquest of seeing a boy in a Spider-Man suit, William's exact outfit, near the foster grandmother's home right around the time he went missing. But another witness threw shade on it, saying it could have been her own kid, still prompting fresh bushland digs in August 2019. The 2019 inquest dropped another bomb with evidence of William possibly driven away in a car, a twist that sparked more searches but faded without solid leads, details kept hazy in reports. The Uluru woman story from 2015, fleshed out in the 2024 podcast, the witness, William Tyrrell, has her insisting she saw him a year later in Central Australia, detailing how she tried reporting it multiple times to cops and Crime Stoppers only to get ignored or turned away, holding firm on the sighting's accuracy despite the brush-off. Over in New Zealand, 2016 brought two separate reports, one in Christchurch and one in Auckland, that police investigated as potential matches, with details on stuff, ends about the checks but no confirmation, the sightings evaporating without trace. Early stats from September 2015 showed 53 possible sightings in a single week, tied to a 60 Minutes episode, underlining the flood but most trivial. 3 sightings hit on the same day in the same spot that month too, but no specifics emerged to back them. The 2023 psychic vision rumor on forums placed him in Bundanoon, his face against a vehicle window alive and moving, unverified but circulating widely. That 2025 satirical X post admitting to keeping him got laughs but no traction as a real claim. The truck driver's 2024 inquest testimony described a suspicious woman near the site that morning, not spotting William directly, but potentially linking to transport if he was alive. The 2025 tree graffiti, noticed by a man near the disappearance spot, carried a cryptic message hinting at insider info, eerie but not a sighting itself. For 2 cases where kids were thought abducted but turned up alive, Luis Armando Albino's story stands out, snatched at 6 in 1951 from an Oakland, California park by a woman and man who lured him with promises, flown to the East Coast and raised as their son, living a full life unaware of his origins until his niece's 2024 DNA test on Ancestry matched him, leading to a reunion with a brother just before Luis died at 79, covered in CNN and KTVU YouTube clips detailing the emotional reveal and his oblivious decades. Mao Yin's tale, also known as Gudningning, unfolds from his 1988 kidnapping at 2 from a Xi'an, China hotel lobby while his dad fetched water. Sold for 6,000 yuan to a childless couple who raised him normally, his mother Li Jingji quit her job to search nationwide, handing out 100,000 flyers and appearing on TV. Until 2020, when facial recognition and DNA via the police ministry database reunited them after 32 years. His story blasting across BBC with details of the emotional hug and Li's relentless campaign that helped find 29 other kids. The evidence and witnesses backing a living William include the clean scene, no struggle, no screams from the foster mother or sister inside, a short 5-4-5-minute window, fitting a quick alive grab without immediate harm. Witnesses like elderly neighbor Paul Savage heard a child's cry that morning, but flipped between gardening and dog walking details. Another neighbor spotted a Spider-Man suited boy near the home around the time. Doubted but real enough to trigger searches. Rumor evidence from over 1,000 reports features the Uluru 2015 woman's persistent but ignored calls, the two 2016 New Zealand probes, and the Kendall man's 2020 inquest account of him distressed in a car's back. Inquest personnel like the 2019 neighbor's Spider-Man sighting spurred digs, psychic Debbie Malone's visions of a white 4WD Hall, and a live status in a familiar place align with some tales. While the 2023 Bundanoon window press vision adds layers. The 2024 inquest truck driver saw a suspicious woman near the site, possibly tying to a live movement. Other bits like the 2025 tree grand spot hint at knowledge, the satirical 2025 admit, post-fueling buzz, and foster parents knocking some as fake but leaving others open. Counter evidence stacks up with stats, 97% of child vanishings tied to known folks, most fatal if not quick found, odds dipping under 10% after 11 years. No solid sightings stick, all 1,000 plus scrapped as errors, pranks, or unproven like the 2025 meme, 2016 New Zealand dead ends, 2015 Uluru dismissals. The 2024-2025 inquest leans death with balcony fall pushes, and 2023 charge recommends for the foster mother on justice perversion and remains interference, counsel driving hard. Psychics like Malone or 2023 Bundanoon lack physical backing, often flopping in cases. No DNA or life traces from dog drone bushland hunts, a 2025 nearby Spider-Man suit unrelated. Foster parents tag 2021 breakthroughs, fake, inquest submission stress death, no fresh alive proof. Overgrown sites from early misfocus imply a missed remains spot, backing hidden death over life. The worst possibility. Move to the scenarios where William Tyrrell might have met his end. Another angle involves death following an abduction by a stranger, harm due to PD motives, or to cover tracks after the initial grab. Death could also stem from assault by someone known, with the remains hidden to evade detection. Finally, it might tie to family disputes on the biological side, killed for revenge or to eliminate a perceived burden. If he's deceased, the lack of discovered remains ties to the vast bushland around Kendall, thousands of hectares of dense forest with challenging terrain full of rivers, streams, and hills, where a small body could be buried deep or fully decomposed after 11 years. We note claims like disposal in a distant spot such as the Bird Tree area on the mid-north coast, about 20 minutes from the scene, based on statements from a suspect's brother. Searches from 2014 to 2025 used cadaver dogs, drones, and metal detectors but came up empty, partly because early efforts wasted time on misdirected leads, letting vegetation overgrow and obscure potential sites. The remains might be concealed meticulously in nearby bushland or elsewhere, as suggested in the 2024-2025 inquest discussions around disposal after a balcony fall to protect custody of his sister. Natural factors play into wild animals could have scattered parts, or natural decomposition in the humid environment left nothing identifiable, especially with the Spider-Man suit found nearby in 2025 ruled unrelated through inquest confirmation. Disposal could extend to remote places like Central Australia, or even overseas if networks were involved, though the 2015 Uluru sighting rumor remains unconfirmed. Diving into the accident and cover-up hypothesis, the narrative centers on William playing chase like a tiger on the front lawn that September 12, 2014 morning, climbing and falling from roughly 1.5-meter high balcony at the foster grandmother's home, suffering a critical head injury that killed him instantly or soon after. The foster mother, in panic over losing custody of his sister, allegedly hid the remains in nearby Kendall bushland within 5 minutes to dodge consequences, staging an abduction by delaying the police call and shifting her search time account from an initial 5 minutes to 15-20 later. The perpetrator here is the foster mother, responsible for the unintentional accident, but intentional concealment and obstruction of justice. Details include her history of assaulting the sister, kicking, striking with a wooden spoon, rubbing the face in feces, threats, leading to 2024 convictions for assault and intimidation that were overturned on appeal in May 2025 due to extraordinary stress. From the case's pressure, NSW police recommended charges in 2023 for perverting justice and interfering with remains, with the police theory detailed in the November 8, 2024 inquest session as an accidental balcony fall followed by a death cover-up. The foster mother denied it in tears during her testimony, but the counsel assisting the coroner pressed the line hard. Witnesses include a truck driver who saw a woman resembling the foster mother acting oddly near the scene that morning, and a neighbor who heard a scream of "no," possibly from the mother upon discovering the accident. Evidence found encompasses the short disappearance window fitting a quick hide, no signs at the site suggesting no abduction. The sisters' mistreatment history confirmed via secret recordings that prompted the 2024 guilty plea. Inquest submissions from 2024-2025 emphasizing bushland disposal with no remains located despite searches. New claims surfacing May 25 in the podcast, Witness, William Tyrrell, about breakthroughs but honing in on the cover-up, and bombshell theory headlines in 7 News spotlighting the scenario. For the hypothesis of death after abduction by a stranger, the story unfolds with a quick snatch from the front yard, while playing alone, no noise or struggle. Taken in one of the gray or white vehicles seen lingering nearby, then killed later to conceal the crime or from PD motives, with remains disposed in bushland or a river far away. The perpetrator is an unknown, sneaky complex offender, potentially a truck driver or someone versed in mid-North Coast routes, profiled a driving by and seizing the opportunity in the quiet cul-de-sac. Stats note 97% of cases involve known people, but this allows for rare stranger grabs, if truly opportunistic. Witnesses feature neighbors spotting the 2 odd vehicles parked near the home that morning, and Paul Savage hearing a child's cry, but altering his account between gardening and dog walking. Evidence includes the lack of struggle at the spot, the 5:45-minute timeline suiting a grab and go, over 1,000 sighting reports suggesting possible later harm, and inquest revelations like a man seeing him distressed in a fast car in 2020 testimony, but no remains surfaced. In the death by acquaintance abduction hypothesis, the plot involves tracking the family, grabbing from the yard, killing afterward for personal reasons or cover, and stashing remains in nearby bushland or an off-grid spot. The perpetrator could be neighbor Paul Savage, with odd behavior, rambling case statements, inconsistent gardening or dog walking accounts that morning, evasive 2017-2018 recorded talks about bushland, and a court noted, "pursue at all costs" mentality. Evidence against him includes his 300-meter proximity to the scene and the heard child's cry with shifting details. Another is Bill Spedding, the repairman visiting 3 days prior. Evidence against him covers revived 1980s sensitive charges in 2015 to force a confession, the alleged "I will ruin you" threat, and a 2033 malicious prosecution ruling awarding $1.48 million for fabricated claims and overreach, though he was acquitted in 2017 with his reputation destroyed. The unnamed off-grid neighbor, dubbed Gorillas in the Mist, built a shrine at his bed's foot with media clippings, poetry on the investigation, and quotes like, "No stone unturned." Made repeated police visits demanding to speak, gestured for handcuffs as if seeking arrest, and vanished for 6 weeks post-incident. Evidence against him includes the shrine and disappearance, with his property searched years later yielding no direct ties but multiple red flags. Witnesses comprise neighbors noting Savage's strange actions, and a man spotting 2025 graffiti hinting at knowledge. Evidence found encompasses scene proximity for Savage, historical charges and ruined rep for Spedding, acquitted but highlighted in ruling, the shrine and post-incident absence for the off-grid neighbor, and no remains but the theory of post-grab harm. The family-related death hypothesis ties to custody fights or neglect backdrop, with William taken in a white 4WD, killed to remove or retaliate, and remains hidden far off. The perpetrator might be the grandfather or father Brendan Collins. Evidence against them includes the removal from biological parents for neglect, psychic rumors matching claims of the grandfathers, Michael Jackson links, and the biological grandmother in a white goods collection rumor with a face against the window. Witnesses are Psychic Malone with white 4WD visions. Evidence found covers the neglect family history, unconfirmed rumors aligning with psychic input, and no remains but the post-abduction harm theory. The accident and cover-up by the foster mother stands as the most likely scenario, with around 90% probability per current police leanings and stats showing 97% of cases involving known people. This draws from the 2024-2025 inquest emphasis on the balcony fall and cover-up, the 2023 charge recommendations. Fresh podcast details from May 18, 2025 in Witness William Tyrrell, on shocking twists, the bombshell outlined November 8, 2024. Hearings vacated December 10, 2024 for coroner findings, ongoing since September 7, 2024 with public theory of death by accident covered up, and headlines on foster parents' guilty pleas for child intimidation. Other possibilities like stranger or acquaintance abductions rank lower, under 10%, due to no confirmed sightings and stats favoring familiars, but they stay open without remains. The failure of the system. We pull together more details on the criticisms leveled at the investigation into William Tyrrell's disappearance, focusing on how its lack of consistency, frequent shifts, and basic errors have drawn sharp rebuke from various quarters. From the outset, the probe faced backlash for its disjointed approach to pursuing different leads, initially locking in on one theory, but later veering sharply to another, which squandered resources and let early search windows slip away without thorough coverage. This flip-flopping meant teams chased shadows in one direction while neglecting potential hotspots in another, leaving gaps that critics say could have been plugged with a more steady hand. We see this in how new squads inherited what was described as bit of a mess, with overgrown search areas symbolizing the inefficiency, vegetation taking over sites that should have been scoured repeatedly, slowing everything down and reducing the chances of turning up key clues. Basic mistakes in handling the initial scene compounded this, like delays in sealing off the area or incomplete evidence collection, which risked contamination and lost vital data right when it mattered most. The investigation also took heat for leaking info to the media, stirring up public chaos and compromising objectivity, with regular updates that sounded good but often lacked substance, fueling speculation without advancing the facts. Coordination between agencies fell short too, causing lags in sharing data and following up on reports, including over 1,000 sightings that got sidelined or handled half-heartedly, wasting tips that might have panned out with better teamwork. Prioritizing shaky theories led to wrongful pursuits and hefty payouts for those affected, eroding public trust in the process. The whole thing dragging on for more than 11 years without resolution, got slammed for opacity and abrupt directional changes, shifting from one hypothesis to another without clear new triggers, leaving families and the community in limbo. Data management blunders echoed other Australian cases, where child protection databases missed addresses for hundreds of kids, hampering tracking and mirroring the inefficiencies here. Critics pointed to the failure to deploy modern tech like DNA analysis or drones early on, missing opportunities to capture traces before time eroded them. Leadership turnovers in the team created disruptions, breaking continuity in tracking leads and repeating errors that a stable command might have avoided. Shifting to the broader picture of how these kinds of cases play out in Australia, the landscape for investigating child disappearances reveals deep systemic cracks, with over 700 vulnerable kids reported missing from outer in Queensland alone as of 2025, a first-of-its-kind census uncovering 772 self-placing absconders, including 27 under 12, painting a grim snapshot of oversight failures. This isn't isolated. Warnings ring out about the child protection system crumbling nationwide, riddled with loopholes in safeguards and regulatory setups that let abuse fester, especially in childcare centers where vulnerabilities go unchecked. In Victoria back in 2022, databases for child protection lacked addresses for hundreds of kids, spiking risks for those already at edge, a pattern that underscores the urgent need for beefed-up protections for children and other at-risk groups. Reports of online child sexploitation jumped 41% in 2025, hammering home the call for stronger defenses against digital threats that prey on the young and fragile. We emphasize the push for reforms of protection and youth justice systems, sifting through recommendations from 61 inquiries to forge a national strategy that plugs these gaps and prioritizes safety. The spike in child maltreatment reports during COVID rattled responses across the board, including in Australia, where crisis strains exposed weak spots in how agencies handle surges, leaving kids more exposed. Preventive actions for missing children have been flagged since a 1988 publication offering advice to cut down risks, yet the situation remains dire in 2025, with systems struggling to keep pace. Balancing the drive to crack cases fast against the need for precision gets tricky. Rushing can spawn fundamental slips, like in Victoria's 2024 child protection breakdowns, where a 12-year-old girl ended up charged with murder amid glaring oversights. Prioritizing speed might skip cross-agency collaboration, as national comparisons reveal inconsistencies in tackling severe child abuse, where hurried steps miss nuances. How do we strike that balance in critical 24 hours after a child vanishes, ensuring speed doesn't lead to wrongful paths, especially when stats show kids under 14 lack the cognitive maturity to navigate dangers? In youth crime handling, there's a contradiction in viewing kids as too immature for social media, yet holding them fully accountable for offenses, tipping the scale toward imbalance in speed versus accuracy. Should we lean more on accuracy through retrospective studies of kids with police contact to prevent caging vulnerable teens, like a 14-year-old with a 5-year-old's mental capacity stuck in cells? Boosting protections via joint operations, such as the 2025 Child Abuse Blitz netting arrests, shows promise, but warnings persist as reports climb, demanding sustained vigilance. Training programs for prosecuting child sexual exploitation cases must ensure accuracy, while accelerating responses, avoiding the pitfalls of haste. In high-speed pursuits, like the 2025 chase of teens from Victoria to Sydney ending in arrests, how do we safeguard accuracy to not endanger those already fragile youth? The Child Protection Framework in Australia cries for overhauls to shield vulnerable children, with AIHW reports tracking rising system contacts that signal deepening needs. Wrapping this up, the Tyrrell case spotlights entrenched problems in Australia's child investigations, from inconsistencies and shifts that left it unresolved after 11 years, much like the 772 missing kids in Queensland care systems in 2025. Lessons here call for national reforms to boost cross-agency teamwork, seal safeguard holes, and put protection front and center for vulnerable groups like out-of-home care children. Balancing speed and accuracy demands improved training and resources to dodge failures, such as absent database addresses or lagged maltreatment responses. We learn to amp up preventive measures for missing kids, zeroing in on early interventions to slash risks and promote public reporting without bogging down on dead-end tips. From COVID's hit, Child Protection Services to hold steady in crisis, locking in accurate assessments. In youth justice, sort out the mixed messages on treating kids as immature yet liable, paving way for ethical probes. Joint efforts like abuse blitzes prove collaboration's worth, but they need ongoing push to fight swelling online exploitation. Retrospective looks at police-kid interactions refine methods, weighing quick moves against cognitive growth factors. Control 12. We pull together more on the criticisms of the investigation into William Tyrrell's disappearance as we build out this video script, starting with how the process drew fire for its lack of unity in chasing leads, jumping from one direction to another and burning through resources while missing prime search times that could have made a difference. This inconsistency meant efforts scattered, with teams pulling in different ways without a clear thread, leaving holes in coverage that critics say let the case stagnate. We see this in the multiple team handoffs, where incoming groups took over what was called bit of a mess, finding search zones neglected and overgrown with weeds, which bogged down progress and cut efficiency as vegetation hid potential spots. Basic errors in the initial scene handling added to the pile, like slow lockdowns or incomplete evidence grabs, that risked tainting the area and losing key info from the get-go. The probe also caught heat for info leaks to the press, whipping up public frenzy and skewing objectivity, with updates coming out regularly but often shallow, stirring rumors without solid gains. Agency coordination fell flat too, slowing data shares and citing follow-ups, with over 1,000 reports getting short shrift or dropped altogether, wasting leads that might have shifted things. Pushing theories without footing led to wrongful chases and big payouts for those hit hard, chipping away at public faith in the system. The drag out over 11 years without answers got blasted for opacity and sudden pivots in focus, switching paths without fresh triggers that made sense to outsiders. Data handling slip-ups mirrored other Australian cases, where child protection databases skipped addresses for hundreds of kids, crippling tracking and echoing the inefficiencies here. Critics hammered the delay in rolling out modern tools like DNA tests or drones from the start, missing chances to catch traces before they faded. Leadership swaps in the team created breaks, halting momentum in lead tracking, and looping back into the same mistakes a steady setup might have dodged. The pivot to fresh evidence review by the NSW coroner in June 2025 sparked by a news. Dig, pushed back final inquest calls and fired up media heat again, hitting family privacy hard and raising public hopes for answers that stayed dangling as December 2024 hearings got scrapped for more looks. That bonus podcast drop-in, witness William Tyrrell. On June 21, 2025, packed with updates and chats ripping into police work, laid bare lingering data mix-ups, tanking trust in the force and kicking off demands for outside audits, which shook team spirit and budget talks. Revelations of a shocking new twist. In the May 18, 2025 episode of the same podcast brought in overlooked bits, lighting a fire under national attention, but underscoring early evidence fumbles that wasted hunts and ramped up the emotional strain on everyone tied to the case. Comparisons in October 19, 2025 reports linking Tyrrell to the unsolved Gus Lamont vanishing drove home foundational scene slip-ups, feeding a loop of stalled child cases across Australia, pressuring policy tweaks, but grinding down advances on Tyrrell specifics. The inquest stretching into late 2025, with submissions spotlighting system-wide data holes akin to Victoria's 2022 child protection messes, dragged out uncertainty for the foster and biological families, boosting mental health hits and public doubt on NSW police's chops. Zooming out to how these kinds of cases fare in Australia, the setup for probing child vanishings shows over 700 vulnerable kids missing from out-of-home care in Queensland as of 2025. With that groundbreaking census uncovering 772 self-placers gone, 27 of them under 12, laying bare the tracking breakdowns that leave gaps wide open. Warnings blare about the child protection network crumbling countrywide, full of holes in safeguards and rules that let abuse take root, hitting hardest in childcare spots where weak spots stay unpatched. Victoria's child protection databases in 2022 skipped addresses for hundreds of kids, jacking up dangers for those already on the edge, a trend screaming for tighter shields on children and other fragile groups. Online child sexual exploitation reports spiked 41% in 2025, driving home the push for stronger guards against web threats that target the young and weak. We stress the call for overhauls in child protection and youth justice, combing through 61 inquiry tips to build a nationwide plan that seals these breaches and puts safety first. Child maltreatment alerts jumped during COVID, shaking responses everywhere including Australia, where the pressure exposed soft areas in agency handling, leaving kids more open to harm. Preventive steps for missing kids have been flagged since a 1988 guide offering ways to cut risks, but things stay bad in 2025, with systems lagging behind the need. Balancing the urge to wrap cases fast against nailing accuracy gets tough. Rushing can breed core flubs, like Victoria's 2024 Child Protect flubs, where a 12-year-old girl landed murder charges amid big misses. Favoring speed might ditch cross-agency work, as countrywide looks show mismatches in hitting severe child abuse, where quick moves skip details. How do we juggle speed in those vital 4 hours after a kid goes missing with accuracy to dodge wrong calls? Especially when numbers show under 14s lack the brain power to handle threats. In youth crime, there's a clash in seeing kids as too green for social media, yet on the hook for crimes, throwing off the speed versus accuracy scale. Should we tilt more to accuracy with look-back studies on kids touching police to stop locking up fragile teens, like a 14-year-old with a 5-year-old's mind in cells? Ramping protections through team ops, like the 2025 child abuse sweep nabbing arrests, packs potential, but alerts keep climbing, calling for steady pushes. Training setups for chasing child sexual exploitation must lock in accuracy while speeding reactions, sidestepping rush pitfalls. In high-speed chases, like the 2025 teen haul from Victoria to Sydney ending in cuffs, how do we lock accuracy to not risk those already brittle youth? Australia's child protection web needs big fixes to guard vulnerable kids, with AIHW reports charting more system touches that flag growing demands. The Tyrrell saga throws light on baked-in troubles in Australia's child probes, from flip-flops and shifts to basic goofs that kept it open after 11 years, much like the 772 missing care kids in Queensland for 2025. Lessons push for countrywide fixes to amp cross-agency links, shrink safeguard gaps, and front-load protection for at-risk crowds like out-of-home care youth. Balancing quick breaks with spot-on work needs beefed training and tools to skip pitfalls, such as database address skips or slow maltreatment replies. We take from COVID's blow to tweak child protection answers for crisis hold, nailing accurate checks. In youth justice, untangle the mixed signals on kids as green but liable, clearing paths for fair digs. Team efforts like abuse sweeps prove linking up works, but they demand ongoing grind to battle rising online hits. Look back dives on police kid meets Honeways, weighing fast acts against brain growth factors.